In the quiet hum of my 42nd year, a chapter of my life came to a resounding, unceremonious close. For 15 years, I had believed I was a co-author of a perfect story with my wife, Vanessa. She was a whirlwind of ambition and beauty, a force who could command a room with a glance. I was proud to be her husband, a steady anchor while she sailed toward the stars of her professional dreams. Now, I understand that my pride was the bedrock of my deception. It was a comfortable illusion I built for myself, one that kept me from seeing the truth that was slowly, subtly, eroding the very foundation of our life together. Vanessa's world was marketing, a high-stakes arena where she was a star. She was brilliant, closing deals that others would have deemed impossible. Her confidence was a magnet, and I genuinely admired her ability to own a space, to make a boardroom her stage. But over time, that magnetic confidence began to feel different at home. The shared ambition we once had morphed into dismissive comments about my life as a software developer, a job she started to refer to as simple. Our partnership dissolved into her making unilateral decisions, and the love I thought we shared began to feel more like a tolerance, a gentle pat on the head for the loyal dog who kept the house running. The changes were insidious, a slow drip of suspicion into the well of my trust. Late-night client dinners became a frequent occurrence. Her phone was a constant companion, ringing with work emergencies. She started buying more expensive clothes, spa treatments, and a new car, all justified as necessary for her professional image. I wanted to believe her, to believe that her career was just demanding more of her, but a persistent, cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. 6 months before her 38th birthday, the subtle shifts became impossible to ignore. Texts would arrive late at night, prompting her to step outside to answer them. She would disappear for hours on weekends, claiming to be networking or shopping with clients. Her laptop, once an open book, was now password protected, and she would snap it shut whenever I entered the room. The worst part was the quiet public humiliation. At social gatherings, she would make little jokes at my expense, about my work, my hobbies, my clothes. They were never overtly cruel, just enough to make me feel small, and her friends would laugh along. I would smile and pretend the sting wasn't there. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperation has its own logic. I hired a private investigator, a former police detective named Robert who specialized in infidelity cases. Making that call felt like admitting a terminal diagnosis, but I couldn't live in the fog of suspicion anymore. I needed the truth, whatever it was, to either mend my marriage or finally let it die. The investigation took 3 agonizing weeks. 3 weeks of feigning normalcy, while I secretly hoped I was wrong. 3 weeks of Robert following Vanessa, documenting her movements and taking photographs. 3 weeks of me going through the motions of being a loving husband while preparing for my world to disintegrate. When Robert called, his tone told me everything. His voice was all business, but the silence between his words spoke of devastation. The evidence was a gut punch. Vanessa had been having an affair with her boss, Marcus Chen, for almost 8 months. The photos were a brutal, silent narrative of betrayal. Them holding hands across candlelit tables, entering and leaving luxury hotels in the middle of the day, kissing in parking garages like reckless teenagers. But the affair wasn't the only deception. Robert had also uncovered a financial betrayal. Vanessa had a secret credit card, a monument to her affair, spending thousands on gifts, dinners, and weekend getaways. She had even used money from our joint savings account to pay for a romantic trip with Marcus, telling me she was at a work conference in Chicago. The betrayal was complete. It wasn't just a violation of our vows. It was a theft of our shared future. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, my mind a vortex of rage and grief. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to throw the evidence on the kitchen table and demand answers. Another part wanted to just disappear, to pack a bag and leave without a word. But then, a thought surfaced, an idea born from the quiet rage that had settled deep in my core. Her birthday party. Vanessa had been meticulously planning an elaborate dinner for weeks, inviting 25 people. Her colleagues, our neighbors, some mutual friends. The irony of her celebrating her life and success, a life built on a foundation of lies, was suffocating. I made my decision. I would let her have her moment of triumph, let her believe she had won, and then I would quietly, methodically, detonate the lie she'd built our marriage on. The next week was a blur of calculated preparation. I made copies of all the evidence, photographs, financial records, credit card statements. I contacted a divorce attorney and started the paperwork. I opened a new bank account and began transferring my portion of our assets. Most importantly, I created a digital presentation. My skills as a software developer, the same skills she had so casually dismissed, became my weapon. I put together a slideshow of the most damning evidence, photos of Vanessa and Marcus, screenshots of their romantic texts, credit card statements detailing her secret spending. I saved the presentation to a cloud drive and prepared to send the link to every person at her party. The night of the party arrived. Our house, or what I had always considered our house, was beautiful. Vanessa had transformed the living and dining rooms into a scene from a magazine. The catered food was incredible, the wine flowed, and everyone was celebrating my wife's special day. I played the perfect host. I smiled, made conversation, refilled drinks, and complimented guests. I was a man on a wire, an actor playing the part of a loving husband, while my world was hours away from crumbling. Around 9 o'clock, as the main course was being served, Vanessa stood up to make a toast. She looked radiant, holding her wine glass, her face alight with confidence. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said, her voice full of authority. "This year has been incredible for me professionally, and I couldn't have done it without the support of all the amazing people in my life." She looked directly at me and smiled. "Especially my wonderful husband, Alex, who keeps our home running smoothly while I chase my dreams." The condescension was subtle, but I heard it clearly. A few of the guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. That's when Marcus spoke up from across the table, his own glass raised. "Vanessa deserves all the success in the world," he said. "She's the most talented, dedicated, and beautiful woman I know." The way he said beautiful made my stomach clench. The way Vanessa blushed and looked down made it worse. They were flirting openly, in our house, at her birthday party, in front of me. But the final straw came from our neighbor, Janet. She made an innocent comment about how lucky Vanessa was to have such a supportive husband. "Alex must be so proud of how hard you work," she said warmly. Vanessa's expression changed instantly. "Well," she said with a laugh that held a cruel edge, "Alex does his part, I suppose, though sometimes I wish he had a little more ambition, you know. Not everyone can be a go-getter." The table went quiet. Heat rose in my cheeks as 25 people suddenly became fascinated with their dinner plates. Marcus chuckled. "Different people have different strengths, I guess." I could hear the smugness beneath his diplomatic words. Then Vanessa made her fatal mistake. "True," she said, taking a sip of wine. "Some people are leaders, and some people are—" She gestured vaguely in my direction. "Followers." The dismissal in her voice was so casual, so effortless, as if I were barely worth the energy it took to put me down. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Vanessa," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the silence. "I think there's something you should check." She looked at me with irritation, probably assuming I was about to make a scene. "What are you talking about?" she asked impatiently. I pulled out my phone, typed a quick message, and hit send. "Check your email," I said to everyone at the table. The message went out to every person there simultaneously. The subject line read, "The real Vanessa, a birthday surprise." For 30 seconds, there was only confused murmuring as people reached for their phones. Then the silence began. Janet gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she stared at her screen. Tom from next door let out a low whistle. Marcus had gone completely pale, his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. Vanessa was frantically scrolling through her phone, her face a terrifying mix of confusion, horror, and rage. "Alex," she whispered, her voice shaking. "What did you do?" "I gave your guests the truth," I said calmly. "Since you seem to think honesty is optional in this marriage." The slideshow I'd created was now playing out on 25 different screens, a brutal display of her lies. Photos of her and Marcus at romantic dinners, screenshots of their explicit text messages, credit card statements showing thousands of dollars spent on their affair, including the work conference in Chicago. "You hired someone to follow me?" she screamed, jumping to her feet. "You invaded my privacy? You stole from our joint account to fund your affair," I replied evenly. "I think we're past worrying about privacy." That's when she slapped me, hard, across my left cheek, in front of everyone who mattered to her. The sound echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. I touched my cheek gently, feeling the sting, and looked around the table. Some guests were staring in shock, others were quietly gathering their things. Marcus looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "Thank you," I said to Vanessa, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I wasn't sure how to end this marriage with dignity, but you just showed me." I walked to our bedroom, grabbed the suitcase I had packed earlier that week, and returned to the dining room. Most of the guests had already fled, but a few stragglers remained, unsure of what to do. "The catered food is paid for," I announced. "Please stay and enjoy it. Consider it Vanessa's farewell party." I walked to the front door, then turned back one last time. "Oh, and Vanessa, the divorce papers are on your nightstand. Your lawyer can call mine." I walked out of that house and never looked back. The next few months were difficult, but also profoundly liberating. The divorce was messy, but the evidence made the proceedings straightforward. I kept our house. She kept her shame, and we both walked into separate futures. I later heard through mutual friends that her relationship with Marcus fell apart within weeks. Apparently, having your affair exposed to your entire social circle puts a strain on romance. 6 months later, I ran into Janet at the grocery store. She told me Vanessa had moved across the country, trying to start over. Marcus had been quietly let go from his position. "You know," Janet said, "I always admired how calm you stayed that night. Most people would have lost their minds." I smiled and thanked her. But the truth is more complicated. I wasn't calm because I was a master of emotional control. I was calm because I had finally stopped pretending. For months, I had been living in a fog of suspicion, questioning my own reality. The moment I decided to stop protecting Vanessa's lie was the moment I started protecting my own dignity. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away, not with anger or drama, but with the quiet confidence that you deserve better. That slap wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. My self-respect, I had finally realized, was never negotiable.